this is a vlog on the 1st of February. I'm in London. I came here for a weekend break to do some walking of the historical city of London. Specifically, I wanted to see fragments of the Roman wall and evidence of the medieval history that I've been watching YouTube pieces about and reading about as well. So it's Sunday, and but this is an introduction to the vlog. I start from Tower Hill. Actually, the hotel there called Citizen M, which is a brand new thing belonging to Marriott. And mostly I'm inspired by a YouTuber called John Rodgers, who does walks around London, hundreds of them, and also nearby places, even out to the East Anglian coast. Mine is just a personal thing, and I'll just include a few things that I saw along the way for anybody who might be interested. Okay. So the Roman Wall of London started from where the Tower of London is now, and this is the first fragment of the eastern side of the walled city. So I'm walking in a westerly direction towards this fragment of Roman wall here. Apparently the Roman wall was built of what's called Kentish ragstone, which was carried in barges up from the area around Maidstone, from quarries there, to build this wall, which would have been perhaps a bit taller than this. And this is about 15 foot high. I think it would have been 20 or 25 foot high. But the level of the ground here has come up since the Roman city was here. It's just amazing that here we are and we can touch the stones. Which wouldn't be so remarkable if I was in Rome, but I'm in London. This is the Emperor Augustus, and I think it's the same bloke was known as Trajan, standing here in front of the southeastern section of the Roman Wall of London. These symbols around his waist, 17 of them I think, can be deciphered to give you some information. That's what those people are doing right now. Artist's impression of the wall in AD 200. Fair enough. So setting out from this first piece of wall, going northwards into the city, the financial heart of London. These are just a few shots of things which caught my attention, like this churchyard with the skulls and crossbones above it, and the edge of the gherkin, so called. Its real name is just an address, I think like 31 Cheapside, I don't know what it is. Yeah, a few shots of just things to give you the atmosphere of a Sunday morning in the City of London. So I'm here in front of the ruins of St Elsing's Hospital from about 1300 I think. This is really quite ancient, but more ancient still, and you can just see a fragment of it through the gap there. Through the window is the old Roman wall around London, and the top courses are medieval. It was rebuilt. Actually, it was first rebuilt by the Normans and then rebuilt in medieval times. Yeah, here is the bit of the Roman wall around London, which is on the street now called London Wall. And that fragment of the London Wall there is actually the corner of a fort which contained about, or which garrisoned about 1,000 Roman soldiers in its day. So now I'm approaching the Barbican complex, which you either know about or you don't. And to my left is the Museum of London in a kind of concrete underpass. Bizarre. To get into the Museum of London, you have to get yourself from street level here up onto that walkway somehow. The answer is an escalator to the car park and walk from there. The Museum of London entrance and the three towers of the Barbican Centre, which was a kind of luxury flats complex. People like MPs and pop stars had flats there. I think it was built in the 1970s. Might be the worst sculpture in London. It's called, can you guess, a horse with two discs. Splendidly English tradition, the Museum of London is closed and it's being rebuilt on another site, and there's nothing when you Google it to tell you that. I think it's kind of wonderful that there are still fragments of Roman structures left at all in London. This was a tower, I think guarding the gate into the military garrison of all the Roman soldiers in London, which was a huge fort. So I'm at the place where 1,000 Roman soldiers used to live. And from the bottom left of this shot to the top right is the line of the wall of the fort. This is mostly medieval stuff you can see that's left. Again, in splendidly English tradition, the famous high walk all around the Barbican Centre is being subject to reconstruction, so you have to hack your way and find your way through various diversions. It was kind of designed to be a town within the city with everything you'd need. Restaurants, cinemas, concert halls, physiotherapy offices, and hundreds of flats, gardens and water features, and little piazzas. There's one down there with fountains and stuff. There's the main building with all the concert halls and things in it. Your mother. I remember once coming to a concert here in the theatre called The Pit, which was Herbie Hancock's and Wayne Shorter. I think it was Wayne Shorter. Could have been Sonny Rollins, but it was, I think, Wayne Shorter. And, you know, it was a good concert, but it was most notable to me for the fact of being in the same room with two still alive jazz legends. In fact, jazz legend and jazz fusion legends. So here I am back again, 20 years later. Ah, and it's still called The Pit. Well, one of the theatres is still called The Pit. So I'm going to look for a coffee and possibly lunch now. It's quite nice. This is midwinter and Sunday, which is why it's kind of empty. So when the Romans packed up and left, their walled city fell into ruins and everything got buried several meters deep under rubble and dust. And the Saxons started to build, but they didn't build inside the Roman walls. They came out here and they built fragments of a new city called Lundenwicke. I'm not here for that reason. I'm here because I need to find an Apple store. So here I am in the heart of Lundenwicke, looking for the Apple store, which I think is in the actual Covent Garden, what they call Plaza, the covered market, which is in front of me, down there. It's very definitely a hill walking this way, which means down there must be a river valley, and I'm wondering if it's the Fleet. I've been watching lots of videos about the lost rivers of London, which are now mostly underground. Again, that's John Rodgers, the English YouTuber. On his videos, you know, he says, oh, look at this, how the road falls away to a deep depression, and you think, no, it doesn't. But when you're here, it's very much more obvious when you're on hills and slopes. So this is definitely a hill, and at the top where the tube station is appears to be a hilltop where Long Acre runs across in front of us. This is Seven Dials. There used to be some sort of tower clock in the middle and actually had 7 dials. Slightly wrong, I was at the wrong junction. There is the 7 Dials tower clock. Neal Street. Okay, I'm going to walk down into Neal's yard and get people a look at that because it's worth seeing. It is not directly off Neal Street but off Short's Gardens. And I think there are two entrances. Here's one of them. So in we'll go and get a drink of some kind. Shaky handheld camera work, sorry about that. Picturesque. I think some of was it the Monty Python team used to live here? I'm not sure. Yes, it is. There's a plaque up there about it. And the famous Neal's Yard Remedies is cosmetics and sort of not cosmetics, I don't know what you call it, personal care stuff, perfume and that. Back up to Covent Garden and the tube station. Just reminds me of the days when I used to commute through London every day. You don't have to think much, you just kind of go with the flow. I used to read a novel as I was walking, but that was in rush hour. So there were people touching me in front, people touching me behind. It was just a column of humanity moving. I have to think a little bit more today because I'm not following a route that I usually follow. So now I'm going to go to King's Cross and St Pancras, change platforms and get a train to Tower Hill. Tower Hill is where the skull of King Dagobert, King of the Cathars, if I remember, is buried. I don't remember exactly who he was, but French. I'll fill in the details later. Into all the line closure announcements. I'm on an escalator coming up to King's Cross, St Pancras. And in some cases, passengers are advised to continue their journey at ground level. In other words, it's so bad, just walk, you bastards. Sundays in London are, I guess, tourist days, which would explain the number of Japanese adults dressed in Harry Potter school uniforms. Last night was the big night out, and around St Catherine's Dock I was surprised by the number of people wearing miniskirts and fur coats. This is my train. I've just got off at Aldgate and quite surprised to find that it's open to the air. And I got off here because I want to. Find a pub called the Black Friar, which has an amazing interior, as I know, though I've never been in there myself. Hopefully I will today. Okay. As I've said, Aldgate is one of the gates through the original Roman city wall. The Romans didn't call it Aldgate, but people did later on. 15 years since I last lived and worked in London. What's changed? Things that leap out at me are almost nothing has changed. Almost nothing. There are some surprisingly tall people around. I've run into at least half a dozen people a good head taller than me. That I didn't find happen before. There are Russian accents, or not, if not Russian, Serbo-Croat or something like that, everywhere around you, at least on a Sunday. I mean, you expect lots of foreigners in London, and especially lots of foreign tourists on a Sunday. I don't know what direction I'm walking in here. Probably the wrong direction. Let's see. Yeah, back that way would be good. Yeah, looking for the Black Friar pub. What else has changed? I mean, the tubes are the same clunky old tubes. Yeah, it's pretty much identical. Even the same films are being advertised on posters, but they're remakes of things like The Devil Wears Prada and Yentl and others. But the same shops are everywhere: Pret-a-Manger, Subway, Greggs. And the city grows bigger and more like a giant techno bastion. There it is down the road. The city, the financial city, looms in front of me. Yeah, I've changed. This looks like the sort of place where a murder would probably be done. Where Shakespeare and, no, Ben Jonson or who knows who would be caught in a gambling fight and stabbed. Oh, it's a dead end. Oh, that's a shame. It must have had, it's Golden Fleece Court. It must have had a pub called the Golden Fleece here once. So, having checked up on facts, there is no evidence whatsoever of an early Frankish king having his skull buried at Tower Hill. I'm not dreaming, that's definitely something I read, and it probably was in the late 80s, and probably in a book called The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, about the Cathar treasure and the Knights Templar, etc, etc. So yeah, I for all these years been under the impression that either Dagobert or Clovis or one of those ancient Frankish kings had his head buried here. So either he didn't, or it's now being well covered up. It's funny, when you read things in the 80s, you didn't naturally assume, oh, this was probably a scam or some kind of disinformation. You just didn't think that. You assumed people who wrote books would bother to write, as far as they knew it, the truth. Times change. Hello, it's my last morning here in London for this long weekend, and I'm just passing the place where no king of the Merovingian skull is buried. There's an iconic view, of course, of the Tower of London and the Tower Bridge behind that. Heading down to the river. I'm going to walk along the riverside to London Bridge. So that lot on the south bank of the Thames, just east of the Shard, is completely new to me. I used to live down there in Bermondsey, but you can't actually see any of the buildings you used to be able to see from here. It's just a mass of glass and steel. And still, actually I lived over there. But that mass of glass and steel is quite shocking. So the river's now running in a sort of canyon between high-tech buildings. And they're still building everywhere. There are cranes, building cranes. And that's the view up the Thames, inland. London Bridge is there. That's the bridge you can see. I'm going to walk to it and cross it so that I'm on the south bank. So this riverside restaurant called Copper has all these pods, which I guess were built as part of the COVID infection countermeasures. They're kind of cute. Earlier I said that basically nothing has changed in London, but thinking about it, one thing that really has is that I've brought some cash with me, and in 2.5 days I've so far been unable to use it anywhere at all. Everything is cashless. This is a moody shot of some pier pilings on the Thames, and it makes me remember that some of the blackened timbers that you can see at very low tides are as old as Saxon, and perhaps even older. Remnants of old jetties from those days, and fish traps. They used to have fixed fish traps. Cormorants, or some kind of diving seabird. This is Billingsgate, and this is one of the buildings which will be opened towards the end of 2026 as the new site of the Museum of London. Maybe I'll have to come back. And next to that is another brand new pile of tinted glass and steel. And that pile of glass and steel is called the Richard Desmond Life Without Limits Centre. But I'm enjoying the way the reflection of the shard ripples in the windows as you walk past. The shard, of course, is a building on the south bank. Over there we can see Southwark Cathedral. This is London Bridge in the foreground, and underneath London Bridge we can see the next two, which I think from memory are Southwark Bridge, Black Friars Bridge, and then Hungerford Bridge. And there's a weird building in the distance. That was here at least 10 years ago. It has windmills. Part of its roof. It's quite far away in the south. I'm not quite sure where that is. Lambeth towards Brixton, not sure. And there is HMS Belfast, and that's been moored there for donkey's years, decades before some of these buildings were started. There's the view downriver towards the sea. That, just underneath London Bridge, looks like where one of the lost rivers may be emerging, one of the northern tributaries of the Thames. I'll put it on the screen later when I find out what river that is. Seahorses? There are seahorses apparently in the Thames. That is astonishing. We can see the tower of St Paul's Cathedral, and then what used to be regarded as the last word in modernity when I was a little kid, the post office tower with its revolving restaurant on the top. The grey and misty buildings you can see there in the distance, that's the newer financial part of London. Canary Wharf and Mudchute and all those sort of places. While I'm here, I've been reading the early history of London, and for years it's wound me up how Americans pronounce the word London as London. London. But now I'm crushed to find that that is actually the original pronunciation of Lundenwicke and Lundenberg crushed. I'm at London Bridge station now. That building you see there is concave as it faces us, and that's the building which focused the rays of the sun. A whole bunch of cars down in the street melted their dashboards. Slight lack of calculation there. It must have been a very sunny day. And when you come off London Bridge, the first thing you encounter is, well, Montague Chambers, whatever that is, Southwark Cathedral, and then down there the pubs at the edge of Borough Market. I'm going into Borough Market, I can't really resist it. Green Dragon Court. I don't know where they get these names from. And the Borough Market looks kind of closed and deserted. And maybe I'm just not quite in it yet. Quite deserted. Here are some people working hard at a bakery school. I remember meeting a young guy in a pub here and recruiting him into my own NGO, disarmament NGO, from another one called Rusi, and persuading him, and he did join us, and I really had cause to regret that in the couple of years following. He was not what I wanted. And the market is for sure absolutely closed at the moment. Maybe it just is on a Monday. What would I know? I hardly ever came to shop here because you tend to end up with an armful of stuff like organic rhubarb and fancy cheeses and pies. Cost you an absolute fortune, and still you didn't really have the makings of a meal. But a great place anyway. And the pubs around here are open from very early morning so that market traders could drink beer and wine from like 5:30 AM. Why not? Rambatan. That word reminds me of growing up in Singapore and Malaya. I think that's probably Malay writing, I'm not sure. Borough Market is built under road and railway arches. Quaint.
So wide.
This area has become more than it was. It's developed. And this looks like a theatre. Or cinema, not sure. Yeah, very much developed. That's Guy's Hospital, and just to the right are the old operating rooms where the public used to be able to sit in on top surgeons of the day doing live operations on live humans. I don't know if they paid or whether it was just a way of the surgeons showing off their skills to attract more work, but that was on St Thomas's Street. Onto Borough High Street. Nothing nice about the street, but it has these lanes going off at right angles, which still preserve some of the pubs from the time of Dickens and well before. I'm going to try and find the one where Dickens actually used to go and drink. A bit like Edinburgh's Royal Mile with its closes. Borough High Street has all these yards. Yeah, this is one of the famous ones. I'm going in, and maybe I'll even have a small beer. drinking a half pint of Timothy Taylor's Landlord. The taste, Yorkshire beer. The taste takes me back to being a late teenager, living in Bolton, Lancashire. It's truly horrible. It's a hoppy, ghastly taste. Either I've changed or the beer has. I think it's me. So I need to stop filming at some point. I think it may as well be here in the George off Borough High Street. Probably sitting at the exact table where Dickens first drafted the Pickwick Papers. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more vlogs and more music videos. Goodbye.